Hi there, I'm Danny Flexen and welcome to the latest edition of SecondsOut FLEXpectations, where we look ahead to what might come into the world of boxing. And what we're going to talk about this week is the big news, or is it news? That's something we can talk about. Yesterday, as Eddie Hearn on Sky Sports, I think Tyson Fury on his social media both said that an agreement has been reached in principle for heavyweight champions Tyson Fury and Anthony Joshua to face off in a 2-fight series in 2021. You'll see we've got an interview up on the channel at the moment with Bob Arum. I spoke to him last night, who is obviously Fury's US promoter. And he said that yes, while negotiations are ongoing, the financial split, 50-50 for the first fight and then 60-40 for the rematch in favour of the first fight victor, was actually agreed 4 to 6 weeks ago. And it's only just been made a huge thing of by Eddie Hearn. He said Eddie Hearn wanted some press, I think was the actual quote. So whether it actually qualifies as news, Bob Arum says it's definitely not, is open to question. But there's certainly been, in the last, whether it is 6 weeks or more recently, a major step forward in negotiations. However, and I hate to be a killjoy, but there's still 3 kind of key obstacles in the way of those 2 fights happening. The first of which is the next fights that both men have got in the books and that are contracted. So Tyson Fury, of course, has got a 3rd fight scheduled with Deontay Wilder, which could be in one of 3 different locations towards the end of the year, probably the week before Christmas, December, Bob Arum said. So if you watch that interview, he talks about the 3 possible locations and what the kind of pros and cons are for each one. It's actually really interesting stuff. I did the interview, so I would say that, but I recommend you watch it. So Tyson Fury's got to get through that. A lot of people would say it's a foregone conclusion because of how clearly he dominated the 2nd fight with Wilder. But Wilder's had a lot of time to reflect, to make changes, and perhaps to approach the 3rd fight with a different strategy. So we'll wait and see how that one turns out. But Joshua's also got a fight against his IBF mandatory contender Kubrat Pulev, which was originally set for the summer at the Tottenham Hotspur Stadium, and now with the ongoing COVID-19 related restrictions on live events and fans in attendance and social distancing and so on, we're waiting to see when and how that fight will actually take place. But we're still hopeful, and I know Matchroom is still hopeful that it takes place this year. And Bob Arum says in the interview, I'm sure with his promoter's hat on as he co-promotes Pulev, that Fury against Joshua won't happen simply because Pulev will knock Joshua out and cause a huge upset. I'm not anywhere near as convinced as Arum claims to be. I'm not sure Arum really believes it himself, but he is a promoter and he's doing his best by his guys. So they're kind of flies in the ointment already. And then if you take it a step further, there are mandatory considerations to think about as well. So Tyson Fury, if he beats Wilder in the 3rd fight, has then got a mandatory obligation against Dillian Whyte, who's waited 1,000 days, 20,000 days, who knows? Pick a number, basically, at this point. I think there's some confusion about how long Whyte's been #1 contender as opposed to mandatory challenger, although that's more confusion of boxing and the WBC's own making. I can understand why people find it hard to distinguish between the 2. Either way, I don't think there's any dispute in that Whyte has beaten a number of good contenders and deserves his shot. And I imagine he'd be loath to wait any longer than is necessary, despite the clamour both in the UK and worldwide to see an undisputed title clash between Fury and Joshua. On Joshua's side, even if he gets Pulev out of the way, he's then got a WBO mandatory obligation in a formidable shape of former undisputed cruiserweight champion Alexander Usyk, WBSS winner, of course. Now, speaking to Usyk's team not too long ago, Alexander Krasuk, at the start of the lockdown period, he said that they would not be keen to wait any longer after the Pulev fight for Joshua to unify the title. They would press their claims. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean they're desperate to fight Joshua, but it does mean they're desperate to fight for the title. So a lot will depend on how amenable the sanctioning bodies are to creating an undisputed champion. And there's no reason why Fury Joshua as a 2-fight package won't still go ahead without particular belts involved. But it does take some of the luster away from the showdown because it's supposed to be for the undisputed heavyweight champion. And obviously Fury's only bringing one belt to the equation, all talk of lineal championships aside for the moment. He's only bringing a WBC. And if the WBC finally decide to get tough on the Dillian Whyte claim, which, history suggests they won't, but if they do and decide to kind of strip Fury if he doesn't face Whyte, Fury will of course want to fight Joshua because it's a huge money fight for him and it's a part of a 2-fight package that will secure his future. Then that would mean Fury entering the Joshua fight with no belts. And the splits that Bob Arum talked about, the 50-50, then the 60-40, are they predicated upon the fact that Fury brings a championship belt, a recognised Big Four championship belt into the equation? Because if he then loses that belt, or even if Joshua loses one of his, the WBO, does that kind of mess with the purse splits, which seems to be the biggest kind of factor that has been agreed and that both parties are happy with? So we'll wait and see. And the third issue, and it could be the most important of all, because I think the first two, there's ways of getting around that. The biggest issue for me is the broadcast companies that back the boxers, both in the UK and in the US, and whether they can come to some sort of compromise so that either both channels in question can show the fight, or that one can give it up to the other, maybe for some sort of financial remuneration. In the US, Fury is exclusive to ESPN, which is a huge platform. And Anthony Joshua, while he doesn't have an exclusive US broadcast partner, it's believed that DAZN have a first and last option. In other words, they can make the first offer to Joshua and they get a chance to match any final offers as well. And obviously if they match it, then it goes with them. So it's going to be interesting to see how that works out. Bob Arum said last night that Fury would have to fight on ESPN, but it could be a pay-per-view that's part ESPN, part another organisation, basically DAZN, in the same way that Fury Wilder was split between ESPN and Fox in the US. But DAZN have no record of putting on pay-per-views. In fact, one of the key selling points for the launch of DAZN was that a subscription service is greater value than offering fights on pay-per-view. So it's whether they want to kind of grey the area of their business model to make this happen. So we'll see. And in the UK, of course, there is no precedent for a shared pay-per-view between BT Sport, who work with Frank Warren, Tyson Fury's UK promoter, and Sky Sports, who are with Joshua. So we'll wait and see what happens about that, because it could be the first time ever that they've worked together in such a way, or it could prove an insurmountable stumbling block. Time will tell, but there are still obstacles in the way, and we'll see if the boxers can overcome those and the parties involved. Let us know what you think below. Would it be the biggest British fight ever? And also, what do you think of these obstacles? Which ones are easier to overcome than others? Let us know what you think, and we'll respond to some of the comments. I'll be back on Monday with Reflections, 4:30 PM, and the next FLEXpectations, Thursday at 4:30 PM. Thanks very much, and I'll see you soon. Cheers.